Hey guys, what's going on? This is Mike. We're torquing it real good. I'm out here today on a winter day, late December, about 5 days before Christmas. Pretty chilly day. It's about 27 degrees Fahrenheit, but no snow, no ice. I will take it. The weather was pretty nice a couple days ago. Got up to 40 degrees, but I had to work, so I couldn't really get out. Unfortunately, it would have been real nice, but you know, today will suffice. And I gotta tell you, I'm loving it. I love being out here. Love being on my bike. No complaints. So today, what I want to talk about was, you know, getting started on a motorcycle. What it was kind of like for me, just starting out not too long ago. And you know, first of all, getting your bike, right? It's the first step for everybody usually. So you know, you gotta think a lot about what it is that you're looking for, what kind of bike you want. Also, you want to go kind of cheap on your first bike because you don't really know what to expect, right? You don't know. Dead animal there. You don't know if you're gonna like riding, first of all. So making a huge investment on something that's short-lived would be, you know, a pretty bad decision. Secondly, you don't know what kind of riding you're gonna like, right? Or even for the type of riding, which kind of bike you want. So I decided I wanted to start with a cruiser, an older cruiser. I went with a 2007 VTX 1300, and I wanted to keep the price point below $5,000. You know, I would have went a little bit over, maybe even up to $6,000 if I had to. And I looked around and I watched a lot of videos on good bikes that are kind of cheap. They're in that category. And you know, you see a lot of the Honda Shadows for, you know, the Honda Shadow 750s came up a lot for our first bike. And at first that did pique my interest. I was considering it heavily, but one of the main complaints that people would say about that is you outgrow that bike very fast. People typically love them for the first year, and then they start getting a bit bored and they want a bit more. So you know, I looked at some larger bikes in the same kind of category, and you come around the VTX 1300, the VTX 1800, Yamaha V-Star 1100, Yamaha V-Star 1300, Vulcans all the way up to 2000, Vulcan 2000, and there's some lower displacements on that too in the thousands, and some Suzukis as well. And then of course there's Harley, and there's also Indian. And for a moment I almost went with the Indian Scout as my first bike, new, willing to drop $15,000 plus fees and taxes and all that and financing. I almost did it, but I realized that would have been a horrible decision. Just as I realized that getting the 750 would have been a bad decision, because I knew I would outgrow that bike so fast. And the reality is, this 1300, after 3 months, I have outgrown it. I'm not saying I'm too good to ride the bike, and I'm not saying 90% of the time it isn't perfect and won't continue to be perfect regardless of my skill. But I noticed about 3 weeks ago, there's times where I get on the throttle, I open it up, and man, I want more torque. Do I want more speed? No, I do not want more speed. I got it up to what's said 110 on the speedometer, but I'm pretty sure it would have only been, you know, around 100. I think my speedometer is roughly 10% off. Obviously that fluctuates depending on how fast I'm going. So I got it up to about 100 on my second week of riding. No, it's my third week. That's my third week of riding. I got to 100, and you know, that was good enough for me. At some point I would like to max it out top speed. It could probably get about 10 miles faster than that with my weight. Right now I'm sitting at 225. So yeah, I think at 225 pounds this thing probably maxes out around 110 miles per hour. It would probably say 120-ish on the speedometer, somewhere around there. You know, at some point I will do that, probably next summer, or this coming up summer when it's nice out and I got a nice stretch on the highway. So no, I do not need more speed, and even if I'm really comfortable, if I want to go faster than 110 miles per hour, I'll take it to the track. You know, I don't need to be doing that on the expressway, putting myself in danger and other people in danger, wearing shitty gear for a situation like that if I went down. You know, now if I'm on the track, I'm on a bike that's meant to do that, I'm being coached, and I got a fucking race suit on, you know, a leather suit. Fuck yeah, dude. Fuck yeah. At this point, I would take it up to all the way up to maybe $150, 160. Maybe not quite right now, but in a few months, yeah, dude, I would take it. I would take it to 160. Do I want to go above 160? No fucking way. Not a chance. In the future, yeah. 180, 190, even 200, maybe 7 years down the road, yeah. But regardless of my skill level, especially now, I do not need more speed. But man, do I want more torque. I want more torque. I mean, if I had to take a guess, I'd probably want about, on this bike at 700 pounds, about 40% more torque. Now, the VTX 1800 has 50% more torque, but it's also 100 pounds heavier, right? So it would probably be pretty close to what this would be at 40% more torque. It'd be fucking fantastic. Now, I am going to switch out the final shaft drive, which will give it a 10% ratio switch. So 10% less HP, but 10% more torque. And then I would like to do an air intake and exhaust. New York is just so ridiculous about exhaust situations right now. Ever since, like, I think it was 2021 or something, 2022, they changed the law that not only is there sound ordinance on the exhaust, you're not technically allowed to even switch the original exhaust out, even if it's the same sound decimal. Pretty ridiculous. But if I do that, I can probably get another 10% on both HP and torque. So I'll get the HP that I lost on the shaft drive swap, so I'll have the same horsepower, but in the end 20% more torque. And I do think that would be pretty fantastic. Where I like another 20%, sure, but at the same time, that's only if this is my only bike in the garage. And I plan on getting 2 new bikes in the next 10 months. So if I have another bike, like let's say an MT-09, right? Not saying that's my next bike, but if I have that, then no, I don't need more than 20% more torque on this bike, because I will be riding this bike for a different purpose. It will be a cruiser, what it's meant to be, not a fucking ripper, you know, not a rocket. So, but right now, because it's my only bike, yeah, it's a little disappointing on torque. So why didn't I just go with the 1800? I would have checked all those boxes off. Well, because starting on an 1800 is ridiculous. A lot of people say starting on this 1300 was a poor decision, and the first week it was pretty overwhelming. I mean, my first day just doing clutch control in the driveway, I was sweating through my shirt. I was so tense. It wasn't even that hot. It was maybe 70 degrees out. And I was just, within 20 minutes, soaked through my shirt. I mean, I almost dropped it 2 times the first week. It got to the point where if it had lowered another inch or 2, I wouldn't have been strong enough to hold the bike up, and I would have had to let it go. Where it got to, I had to stall a second to stabilize it before I could get enough strength to start pushing it back up. I almost dropped it. It happened 2 times in a week, which I would have been so pissed if that happened. Because this bike when I bought it, didn't have a single scratch on it. 3,800 miles, not a single scratch. The guy never drove it. He had it for 17 years. He took it out once or twice a year for like 30 minutes. And then he kept it in his garage under a cover. He still had the original tires on it that had over half the tread. Now I had to replace the tires because they started to get a little bit of rot. You know, there's some cracks in it, so I had to swap them out. But still, the point being made, like, if I had dropped this in the first week, whoo boy, I would have been real pissed. Anyways, so I did not go with the 1800, although I came real close to doing that until I started reading more threads, Reddit threads on how horrible of a decision that would be. You know, and I wasn't even so confident in getting the 1300, but I said, fuck it, I'm gonna go with it, and I did. And I'm really glad, because after a month, I was comfortable enough where it was not overwhelming, it was perfect. And after 3 months, I was slightly disappointed. But not disappointed to the point where it was a bad buy. It was still a great buy, because once I get a torquier bike, I'm gonna love this thing for everything that it is, you know. And I don't ever see myself selling it. I'm gonna put some work into it. I'm also gonna extend the front forks. You know, I'm gonna pitch it out a little bit and extend it a little bit of a chopper look. Nothing too extravagant or you know, over the top, and some other mods. So yeah. So anyways, after I decided what kind of bike I wanted, I decided I either wanted a V-Star 1100, V-Star 1300, or the VTX 1300. Those were the three bikes I was willing to get, and the only three bikes I was willing to get. And I started looking around. I also wanted it with relatively low mileage on it too. You know, under 15,000 miles max. Anything 15 and under I was okay with. And you know, I didn't find anything locally dealership wise. That was the first thing I looked, were dealerships, because I didn't want to do my first buy with private, because I just didn't know what I was looking for or what to do, and I didn't want to get swindled. And I knew a dealership was going to charge a little bit more and be a little shadier, but if you have no background, it's pretty risky buying a used bike. So I looked around. I found a 750 locally. That was it. Couldn't find anything else that was within an hour drive, 2-hour drive actually. And I almost went with that 750, but in the end I didn't. I hesitated, and they actually sold it right before I would have bought it if I was going to, and I was kind of relieved because I could stop thinking about it. And so I found one. I found a 1100 and I found a V-Star 1100 Yamaha and a Honda VTX 1300 in the same shop that was about a 3-hour drive away. And I said, fuck it, I'm gonna go check it out. It was actually like a 2.5 hour drive. And this place was like the biggest motorcycle used retailer in the upstate New York area, which is where I live. I was out in Utica, I believe. So I went out there and I checked it out, and both bikes had around 15,000 miles on them, but they were a bit chewed up. I mean, underneath there was rust on the frame. One of them had a rusted chrome on the muffler. The seats were kind of cracking. One of them, the seat wasn't even like secure, it was wiggling. You know, and there were other things about it. The VTX 1300 on that, the muffler was, the bracket that was holding it onto the frame was bent. So the guy had obviously dumped the bike, who owned it before. And then the 1100 Yamaha was like, it was missing. It was supposed to have, for the model it was a cruiser, it was a bagger model. It was missing the windshield that it was supposed to have, and the saddlebags were heavily weathered, and the passenger seat and the sissy bar were heavily weathered. You know, but I had already reserved a U-Haul and a trailer. I was planning on going there to buy a bike. And I asked the guys, I'm like, I talked to the sales lady, I'm like, listen, I will buy either one of these bikes today if you drop them from $3,800 to $3,000. She went back, talked to the owner, came back. She said she couldn't do that, but she would send out their mechanic to talk to me, and he came out and talked to me. And he asked if I had any questions, and I pointed out all the flaws of the bike, and you know, he nodded, he didn't deny it, and he said the 1100 was in better shape, and just, if it was him, he would not get the VTX 1300. I said, okay. I'm like, look, $3,000, I'll buy this bike. He's like, no, we don't negotiate here, we can't do that. I'm like, even with all these flaws, I'm like, this bike blue books at this exact value in mint condition, and these bikes are not in mint condition, and you know there are going to be other fees they're going to try and tack on at the end on top of that, you know, on top of the tax, right? Because it's a dealership. That's the kind of shit they pull. And he's like, no, we don't negotiate. And I'm like, okay, just drop off $250 then. I want to drop off $800. I'm like, just knock off $250 and I'll buy this bike. Because I was desperate. I wanted it. I wanted it bad. And he's like, no, man, we don't negotiate. And I'm like, is the owner here? Can I talk to the owner? He's like, hold on. And he disappeared. And then what happened was, the woman at the service desk came back. She's like, oh, the owner is going out on a group ride right now. He can't talk to you. He's just getting geared up right now. He's leaving in 10 minutes. And I was like, well, look, I need to talk to him. She's like, well, you can come back tomorrow. I told him, like, yo, I'm out in Rochester, hours away, and if I leave here today, I'm not coming back. And I meant that 100%. She's like, oh, okay. She got kind of panicky. She went and talked to him again. She came back. She's like, no, he said no. He doesn't want to talk to you, and he said no. He said the only thing he'll do is give you a discount on gear. And I think she said like 40% off on a helmet. And I was thinking, oh my God, fuck this. Well, I went over and I looked at the helmet, and they were all just like the bottom of the barrel quality helmets, and I just was not going to buy any of those helmets. There's no chance. You know, I told her, I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? There's nothing you guys are willing to do. Like, this is a 17-year-old bike that's kind of beat up, and all I'm asking is for $250 off. She said no. And so I walked out. And I didn't go back. Fuck them. I will never go to that dealership again for any reason. And so I left. I went home. I drove, the long drive home, real disappointed and somewhat annoyed. Like, I just couldn't believe it. Like, you guys are overcharging for this bike that's probably been sitting here for a year. You're not going to sell that bike for that price. If anybody buys that bike, they're a complete moron. So I went home and I was like, fuck it. I'm getting a new bike. And I went back to the idea of getting the Indian Scout. Brand new. I thought about it. I asked a relative if they'd be willing to help me get a loan on it, and they said yes. And I thought about it overnight, and I decided it's a bad decision. It's a bad decision, and I thought, fuck it, maybe I can find something used from a private seller. So I decided to use Craigslist because I do not have Facebook, so Facebook Market was out of the question. I got rid of my Facebook account like 15 years ago, and it was the best decision I ever did. Because that shit is toxic, and just, first of all, it's real easy to make an ass out of yourself, especially if you're drinking. I know that from experience. Trust me, I did that in abundance of time, especially when I was younger and stupid. And also, it's just everybody on social media is just, they're either being fake as fuck, negative as fuck, or they're just trying to like project their life as so much better than it is when it's not. Because let's be real, everybody's life sucks some way or another, and everybody has good shit too. But people try so hard to show that their life is so great, and then you start comparing yourself to them, and you start getting a little depressed, and it's just, social media is just not healthy. It's not mentally healthy, and I figured that out sooner than later. And man, it was hard to delete that account. I tried like 10 different times. I would delete it and then go back on, and there's like can't remember how many months it is, but you can sign back on and it reactivates it before it permanently deletes it. It took me like 10 tries before I eventually was able to just not go back, and I made it through the 3 or 6 month period or whatever, and it was permanently deleted. And by that time, dude, I didn't give a shit. I was so happy I was done with that crap. Anyway, so I was on Craigslist and I found 3 bikes. One VTX 1300 and 2 Yamaha 1100s that seemed to be in decent condition, that were in my budget. One of them, though, was ridiculously cheap. I mean, ridiculously cheap, and the pictures were really weird looking, and there was no like plates on the bike, or there were other cars in the lot that didn't have plates on them, and it looked like somebody stole that bike. It was either a scam or somebody stole the bike, because I mean, it was like $1,500 for a bike that should have been $2,500, $3,000. So I passed on that. And then there was another one that was it was overpriced. It was like $4.5 grand. It looked like it had been chewed up a little bit. So I walked away from that. And then there was one more. It was $4,000. It was the one I got. VTX 1300, 3,800 miles on it, mint condition. But the thing was, the guy only had a few photos, and they were really low quality, low res, low quality photos. I thought, shit, dude, is this guy trying to pull a fast one on me? Is this bike fucked up? Did he drop it or something? Or is it a scam? Or, you know, and then you start reading about other scams, how they put like GPS on the bikes, and then they come and, after you buy the bike, they come and steal it back, and then they just change the frame, because the frame has the VIN number on it, and they just take all the parts off, put a new frame on, and they sell it again. You know, you start reading about all these different scams. Anyways, I said, I'll give it a shot. I sent the guy a message and everything, and he called me back 2 hours later, talked to me, and I'm like, man, this guy seems legit. He seems nice. He seems like it just something felt right about it. I don't know how else to explain it. I just felt like I could trust the guy. So I told him, like, yeah, all right, when are you free? He told me like 3 days later on a Monday. I said, all right, I will drive down there and check it out, and if everything holds up, because I asked him, like, is there any flaws in the bike at all? Is there anything? He said, there's nothing. Not a single scratch on it. Nothing. And I said, okay, I'll check it out, and if it's everything you say it is, I'll buy the bike from you. And he was excited. And the next day he called me back, and he's like, hey, I just want to double check a few things with you. And we talked, and he said, also, I had this listed on Facebook for $3,500, not $4,000, and I want to just give you that price because I don't want to screw you over, and that's what I was going to sell for, which is great, because I was going to try to lowball the guy for $3,500. That was my plan, to go there and say, I'll give you $3,500 in cash, take it or leave it, and if he didn't take it, I was going to walk. And he offered it to me on his own, and I was so happy and elated and excited, and I was like, yes. So anyways, I drive down there, I meet up with the guy, and yeah, everything he said was true. The bike was in perfect condition, 3,800 miles on the tachometer, just perfect. Everything was perfect. I couldn't believe it. You know, I checked over the title. He was in fact the only owner, and his name was on the title, 17 years. He even said when I got there that there was a lien on the bike years ago. We took care of it, but for some reason it didn't clear. So he went down to the DMV early that morning and got it all sorted out. And he did. So I talked to the guy for a while. It was really cool. Big Superman fan. Dennis, if you ever see this, shout out to you, buddy. Thank you. You're a great person, and you took great care of this bike, and thank you. So yeah, I bought the bike. I couldn't drive. I had not ridden a motorcycle yet, so he had to ride it up on the trailer for me, and he did. And he even helped me tie it down and everything. I just had, you know, those belts you use with a crank lever system on them. And drove it back with the U-Haul, unloaded it, took the U-Haul back, and I fired it up. Fucking fired up perfectly. He obviously fired it up when I was there. I told him just to take it around the loop, around the block, so I could just see it worked. And and then I fired it up again when I got back. You know, I ran through the gears. There was a little bit of a problem with the gear. I was having problems getting from first to second, but that's because sometimes you have to rock the bike, and also the shifting lever need to be lubed up. I ended up working that out, and I lubed it up. I learned how the bike, and yeah, the bike shifts perfect. There are zero problems with it. Zero problems. Sometimes you have to just, when it's in first gear shut off, you have to kind of just roll the bike a couple inches to get it, and it goes right into whatever gear you want. I mean, yeah, that's it. And then I took it into the shop. I had them change all the fluids out, the oil, the brakes, and then put new tires on. And unfortunately, the shop I took it to was a bigger shop, because the smaller shops would have been cheaper, but they were kind of bogged down at the time, and I didn't want to wait. I had my MSF course in 10 days or 2 weeks from that point. I wanted the bike done before the course started, or at least by the time the course ended, so that I could take it out when I got my license. You know, they did it. They charged me fair price for everything except for the tires. They ripped me off real bad in the tires. First of all, they upcharged the tires like $100 each tire, and then they charged me like 10 hours for the labor. $10. I was so pissed. I had a $1,500 bill at the end of it, and then I'm pretty sure the guy added like $60 to the bill at the end because I used a credit card instead of cash. Yeah, $1,500 for fluid swapped and tires changed, and 2 sets of tires, or 1 set of tires. I was pissed, and so that was the only bad. Basically, dealing with the dealerships was the only bad experience I had getting my first bike. Everything else was real great. Learning how to ride was fucking awesome. It was so, I mean, dude, it was pretty scary and stressful at first, but every time I turned the bike off and was done, no matter how stressed I was on whatever I was focusing on learning that day, it was just like a huge shit grin on my face when I was done. It's fucking awesome. And I knew this was a lifetime thing. So yeah, and then I took the MSF course. After that, a couple days later, I went down to DMV, got my license, and I have been just ripping around as much as I can ever since. It really was just a great experience overall. And now I'm looking forward to getting my next bike, which, you know, at the moment, I want the MT-09 SP real bad, but I don't know if that's the right choice yet. So I'm heavily considering 2 bikes right now. The DRZ 400S. There's a 2024 model for $6,000 at a dealer near me. That's the last year they made that before they did the newer model, the 4S, which has a fuel injection instead of the carbureted. Because the other model has been in production for like 20 plus years, 20 years or more, the same exact bike. But it's because it was that good and people love it that much. But they did update it recently, making a fuel injection, and they added some like traction control. I don't give a shit about traction control for a fucking dual sport dirt bike. Fuel injection would be nice, but it's $10,000 for that bike. There's no way I'm paying 10 grand for that bike. I can get a 2024 new, just have to deal with the carburetor, and it's $6,000, or you can find one used. These bikes are one of the most reliable bikes of all bikes made on the market up to today. Like, you could just get one. The worst case, if you find a good one, is the fairings are scratched up. You could just buy fairings for it. It's probably not more than $500 for a good pair of fairings, and everything else is going to be bulletproof on that bike. So I'm considering that, and I'm also considering, I was going to get a Ninja 6R. That's really what I was fucking really getting pumped about. And I want a new one. And the 2026 one has one of the color schemes. It's like this like matte gray, so it's not shiny. It has like a flatter matte gray to it with blue accents and blue rims. I think that bike looks so fucking amazing, so amazing. And the problem is the 2024 and 2025 models. In 2024 they started a new series, a new generation, because of fuel emissions. They had to change some shit up, and they had a recall on it. And at the time they were saying there was something with the bushing that was causing some kind of issues, and it was locking up the engine, and the rear tire would lock up. People were being thrown out the fucking bike at high speeds. And, you know, but Kawasaki manned up, recalled it, and they said they fixed it. And I was like, alright, fuck it. Every bike company has recalls. It's nothing new. It sounds like they've got it under control, and I would hope the 2026s don't have those issues, or any issues for that matter. And I was so ready to get that bike, and then a second recall happens for the same issue. They had no clue what they were doing to fix it the first time. And apparently the letter said there are no available parts, so you got a do not ride notice, and there are no available parts, and there's no ETA and when they're going to be able to fix the bike. That's real bad. So I said, not buying that generation, and I probably won't buy the next generation either. So if I'm getting a 6R, it's going to be a 2023 or older. You know, so I looked at 2023s used, and they're like $500 off from the MSRP. That's it. Like, there's no price reduction on that bike. And it's like, I'm not going to buy, right now at least, a used bike for almost full MSRP that's a track bike, and there's just a good chance that either the person beat the piss out of it, didn't maintain it properly, or dropped it on the track or in the road. Just not going to do it. Just not right now. In the future, yes, but not right now. When I get more knowledge and experience, I will. So I started looking at the ZX4RR, the inline 4 track bike that's a 400cc displacement. And I was like, you know, the bike looks great. It looks great. It has almost everything that the ZX6R has, just a smaller displacement, and you can rev the shit out of it, dude. It revs to 16,000 RPMs, and it sounds amazing. It rides amazing. It looks amazing. But it only had like 55 horsepower and 25 pounds of torque. Now, what I found out looking into it is that bike is neutered a bit to comply with emission regulations without making without trying to freaking ghetto rig the bike to work in emission standards. So they do it with the computer system. But I found out you can flash tune it, and you can get it up to like 70, or roughly around 75 horsepower, which I do not need more than 75 horsepower right now. So it gets up to, like, with somebody my weight, maybe 130, 135 miles per hour. That's as fast as I want. And on top of that, everybody says when you first start learning track, I mean, that bike I'm going to use a lot in the street, but it's mainly going to be a track bike. And for your first track bike, most people suggest using the Ninja 400, which is about 45 horsepower, and I don't know what the torque numbers are on that. But I'm like, I can't buy that bike. I'm too crazy to start on a bike. Like, I will get bored so fucking fast on that bike. I don't give a shit that it's the smartest decision to start learning track riding. I can't do it. Just like I couldn't do the 750 Shadow instead of the VTX 1300. But the ZX4RR is kind of somewhere in between that Ninja 400 and the ZX6RR, or the ZX6R. It's right in the middle of it. And because it's such a rare thing, like, nobody is making 400 inline 4 track bikes. Like, they used to do it, I don't know when, like the 90s maybe or something. I'm not exactly sure. But dude, in 2025, that's a rarity, and that's a bike. Even if I outgrow it on the track, I'm gonna want that bike for the rest of my life as a collector's item at the minimum. And the fact that you can rev it out on the road, you know, within reasonable speeds without getting losing your license and get thrown in jail. And if you want to, you can get up to 130 on a fucking pole on the expressway, you know. And that's all I want to do. And you get to rev it out all the way from 0 to 100, you know, first through fifth gear, and even use sixth gear on the highway. Fuck yeah, dude! It's gotta be so much fun. It doesn't matter what your skill level is, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. I'll bet you that bike is fantastic for anybody who likes super sports. So those are two bikes I'm looking at. The ZX4RR and the DRZ 400S. I don't know which one I'm going to get, because I can only get one. I'm going to do it sometime around in February, late February-ish. I'm going to have to finance. So I'm only going to finance one bike at a time. Anything else I get, I would have to buy in cash. So maybe I'll try to get the DRZ in cash. Save up for it, maybe even buy a used one for $4,000 and finance the Ninja ZX4RR. Yeah, and The only thing holding me back is, man, the MT-09. The MT-09 SP. It's, first of all, I don't like the way that bike looks, but if you put an exhaust on it, and you change the mirrors on it, it actually looks pretty good. It's a good looking bike if you do those two things. You know, the headlight is polarizing. I don't really have feelings left or right towards. I don't think the headlight looks good or bad. It's just, you know, it's got that cyborg transformer look to it. It's fine. I think it looks cool. I think it looks cool with the circular light. You can switch out the light if you want. But man, from what I've read, the way that bike rides, once I get a little bit better, a little more skill, I know that I'm gonna love that bike. But you know, for the moment, I don't know. I think the ZX4RR is calling my name. It's calling my name. I can go to the track next year 2 or 3 times, and then, you know, rev the piss out of it on the street. Occasionally get a nice highway pull, expressway pull. Maybe get up to a $125-ish, 130, a couple times next year, and it's gonna look cool and feel cool to ride. So that's what I gotta say, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little intro, and this is Mike checking out. Have a nice day.